Welcome to the Negotiation in Real Life podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Davidson, and in this podcast, we'll explore the art and science of negotiation in real-world situations. Whether you're negotiating a business deal, asking for a raise, or trying to resolve a conflict with a colleague or loved one, negotiation is an essential skill that can help you achieve your goals and build better relationships. Through interviews with experts, real-life stories, and practical tips and techniques, we'll deep dive into the strategies and tactics that can make you a better negotiator. From understanding your own negotiation style, to reading body language, handling difficult conversations, and overcoming common challenges, this podcast will give you the tools you need to negotiate with confidence and achieve your objectives. So whether you're a seasoned negotiator looking to refine your skills, or someone who's new to the game, join us as we explore the world of negotiation in real life. Today on the Negotiation in Real Life podcast, we're joined by Jemimah Ashley. Jemimah is an award-winning entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and keynote speaker. After a 13-year career in law enforcement, Jemimah left the Australian Federal Police, since gone on to start multiple six-figure businesses, release a best-selling book, win multiple awards, and in 2022 was named one of Australia's top 10 entrepreneurs. Jemimah states a lot of her success in business came from a career in law enforcement, where she specialised in reading body language and micro-expressions. Jemimah has worked with some incredible teachers such as Paul Eckman and has studied this for years. Jemimah, I am absolutely delighted to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. And it's really interesting because I met you in a very different context to all of this federal police type stuff. You are these days somebody who is highly visible, and I know that's the area that you work in, but you haven't always been visible. So perhaps before we get into the nuts of this discussion, you might like to give people a bit of an idea about who you are and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am Jemimah Ashley. I run a company called the Visibility Lab, and we specialize in helping people get seen. Because for a very long time, I was very invisible and actually not allowed to be visible at all. And when I finally kind of fell into I had a lot of success very, very quickly, where I was very, very much forced to choose. Do you want to stay in law enforcement, or do you want to go and try something else? And I was like, you can't do both. I literally got that. You can't do both. And I was like, I'm taking that one. I'm out. And they're like, no, but you're very skilled. Can you just stay? And I was like, nah, I'm out. See ya. Like, I'm going to do something else. So, and now I run a company. I have a whole bunch of team underneath me. I have some amazing stuff, and I run a networking group. I'm a little bit all over the place, constantly traveling. And yeah, Nicole, occasionally get to see you at networking things.
We do indeed.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I am really looking forward to having a bit of a discussion about some of these skills that you got in the law enforcement space. And, one of the questions that I'm often asked by people when I'm teaching negotiation is, that there's a lot of questions that come around body language and, how you can tell. Particularly the question I get is, how do you know when someone's lying? So perhaps, first of all, starting with some of the basics from your work, what is body language?
Body language from the top down is what we would refer to as non-verbal communication. So every single thing that you are doing, and let me be very clear here, at all times, we are never not transmitting information. And it really is every single thing. It's how we dress, it's how we walk, it's how we turn up to things, it's our blink rate, it's our hair, all of this stuff is telling us something. And where I have expertise in is putting that stuff together. And, that's the core crux of this. It's all about what you are non-verbally telling us at any second of any day.
I absolutely love that. And I'd be interested, I don't know if you've come across this, there's the work of a guy called Albert Morabian, who talks about the fact that when our body language and our tone of voice are incongruent with the words that we're saying, it's only 7% of the meaning comes from the actual words. So I'm assuming that's highly relevant to the things that you're looking at when you're talking to people and when you were doing this professionally.
Yeah. And it's a skill set that I have. And so it doesn't ever truly go away. So at a very human level, we all have this.
Mm.
Every single person is built with this inside of us. And because our security is really based on our nonverbals.
Yeah.
It is the people coming towards us on the street. It's that person that we meet at a bar. It's that guy who's delivering our pizza that we're opening the front door for. It's the person walking behind us. It's people behind us at the ATM. This stuff is all nonverbal. We don't have like, hi, are you a threat? Nicole, I'm just checking. Are you a threat for me right now? No, you're good. We have to take a lot of this from nonverbal. Women are particularly better at this than men are, because from, I think, a DNA kind of really like cave DNA core of us to be able to read body language a lot quicker. And most people, we are transmitting all the time. You can't not transmit.
Yeah.
But as humans, we are lousy at detecting deception.
Yeah.
What we're very good at picking up is when it's incongruent. So we won't be able to go, they're lying, they're 100% lying. And that is, you know, the stuff you see in movies, that's not real. Like, you can't be like, they touch their nose, they rub their eye, you can smell a rat. No. That's not how this works. What it is, though, is really like, you've seen something, probably a micro expression, and they've said something and they're not congruent. So often that comes across to us as, I don't trust that person, but I don't know why. And sometimes
I was going to say it's more of a gut instinct thing.
You're
then,
like,
isn't
that
it?
guy, I don't like, everyone else likes the person, and you're like, I don't know, there's something off with them because you've seen something they've missed.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's a couple of things that I want to pull out from that. So the first is that, you know, you're saying everybody's doing this all of the time. And I'm assuming the difference is that for most of it, it is being done at an instinctive level, where what you're doing is doing it at more of a conscious level because you've understood and you've learned all of those skills. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, for sure. I've learned it from a perspective of what's the intention.
Yeah.
What you're saying to me right now, are you being deceptive? Yes, no. And we'll go into some real examples of that later and what that can look like.
Yeah.
And why you shouldn't always trust your first instinct on this, because there's many ways of looking at this, but it is, you know, we are all doing it all the time, no matter who we're with.
Yeah, fantastic. So the second thing that you raised was this idea about micro expressions. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so micro expressions this is Eckman's work. This is the core principle. In human existence, we have 7 different expressions that every single person that has ever been, like the tribes that have never had contact before, the second you were born with these, and it is something that we all have, and no one has ever broken away from this. Blind people have this. This is not a learned thing. It's very, very clear it's not learned. So we have 7 universal expressions. Those are, so every single person shows these: happiness, which is, if you're doing videos, just a smiling happily; surprise, where we have a wide mouth gape, and that's like real surprise. You ever see someone real surprise? Contempt, which kind of is a little bit down and we pull up a little bit here.
Yep.
Kind of looks like we're trying to block our nose a little bit. Sadness, classically sad. Disgust, that's when we're really sucking in. That's like up here, you're blocking your nose. It's a snarl. You can really see like a pull up here. Fear, often wide eyes and heads back a little bit. And anger is often head forward. These, if no matter what you are doing ever, your face will betray you. You're happy to see someone. It's when you see someone, they're like, hi, how are you? And you're like, they are not happy to see me, but you can't name that. It's probably because you've seen disgust. Probably seen your disgust flashed. You will see this every single day on every single person. You can train to get better at it. It is definitely something you can learn, but every single person shows these. You can't hide them. You can attempt to, but
you can put a mask over the top, but the micro expression will still show through, is what I'm
100%
hearing.
If you're talking about someone you don't like and you flash contempt, like, yeah, she's great. And you see, so for me, I can see that very, very clearly. It's my favorite one to see. So I often look for it. Like, oh, so you don't like that person. Interesting. But it is like, you can't get away from this. So there's a lot of studies done on this, and basically what happened is this beautiful man, Paul Eckman, goes out to the middle of these tribes, and they have these facial expressions, and like, if someone dies, what's the face they're making? If someone is scared, and they always pick it right. Blind people, same thing. This isn't a learnt thing, because are we learning this from other people? It's actually in our DNA.
Yeah, okay. And so, well, firstly, I guess if somebody wanted to learn these, I mean, how long does it take to be good at picking these up and reading them?
It's very easy to learn it, but you have to flex that muscle a lot. So it's something that you have to train in. And there are a lot of courses and programs. I can certainly send some links for your people to go and do those. They're a couple $100, and what they'll do is have thousands of images. And your job is to and it starts as 1 second where you might get a video. You might get a quick smile, and then it'll drop and what is and then suddenly it gets to quarter second, microsecond. They call them micro expressions because you can't control them. So it slowly gets you attuned to reading them. It's much like a second language. You just get a little bit caught up to it. Courses are, usually you probably get 2 weeks of introduction. Let's go through where this come from. Let's do the history of it. But then it is that muscle repeat. You have to do it on repeat. I also recommend going and watching. You can watch some great videos on YouTube and then practice.
Yeah.
Just with people around you. Watch conversations happening and see if you're oh, that seemed incongruent, and then see if you can figure out how and why.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you can't exactly look at somebody and go, that seems incongruent. Hey, you were smiling, but you actually had a bit of disgust on your face. Why don't you like them?
What's up with that?
But it's interesting too, because and sort of coming back and putting a bit of a negotiation lens on all of this, as I said, one of the challenges that comes up is that people are worried that others are lying to them. So they might go, oh, look, I've got another offer. Yeah, I'm thinking about taking this other offer. You're going to have to put a bid in really quickly if you want to get this, or you're going to have to up your price. And they're worried that they're being lied to. So one of the challenges that I have, and, one of the things that I think in negotiation is often we only see the behaviours, but we don't really know what the underlying intention is. So when you pick up on these things, when you've got a micro expression that's popped up, what do you then do? I mean, if you come back to the work that you did in the AFP, do you just go, I've seen that, so I know that they're lying, or is there more that you need to do?
There's a lot more that you need to do. It is very dangerous. These TV shows like Lie to Me is great. They do some really great stuff on it.
I love that show. That's fantastic.
Great show, right? And really based off the work of Paul Eckman. He's amazing, and he did all of this stuff, and it's based on basically what he built later. It's a very Hollywood version, but it's a good show. And some of it's right. They get some of it correct. It's very hard to be to go, oh, they flashed one thing, so therefore this means X.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. So this is probably the dangerous part about trying to read people that you don't know, because you need to have and you have to be aware to never come in from this as an idea of judgment. I'm here to judge what they're saying. You have to be looking at the information as a whole that is being transmitted. So let me give you an example. I was speaking to my sister the other day, and I asked her about a friend of ours, a mutual friend. I've got a younger sister, and she flashed contempt at me. We've all been friends for 10 years. I'm like, do I have some questions for you? Now, here's what let me give you some scenarios I went through my head. 1, they've had a fight. 2, she's asked my sister to borrow money. 3, maybe she slept with my sister's husband. 4, there's a ton of things that can lead to contempt. Do you know what it was? She got the last size skirt at Target, and she was just annoyed about it. This is the problem with micro expressions, is it's going to show up because you're just annoyed at someone. It's going to show up on your face. Yeah. The job that you have, and this is why it's about non-judgment and just reading what's being transmitted, you have to go, okay, well, there's contempt there. Oh, how is she? You know what she did? I was at Target with her, saw this skirt, she grabbed it before I had a chance. And then I had one size left. I got to wait 2 weeks. And I started laughing because I was like, oh, and I'm immediately catastrophic thinking with it. I'm like, oh my God, is she trying to sleep with your husband? Is she trying to do all this stuff? No, she's just a human that my sister got annoyed about it. And I giggled because I was like, this is a classic example of you need more information.
I love that story. And it's interesting because it ties in with what I always say is that one of the best skills that a negotiator has, or one of the key sort of things, is a mindset of curiosity. And that's what I'm hearing there is you've got to see these things, and it's got to make you curious.
Yeah. There are real, that's one thing, and that's 1 second of one conversation. And I just happened to catch that part. And that's where I think we need to be really clear on, you might be able to catch some of these, but you're not being able to catch all of them. So you've got to be very mindful that even if you saw a contempt and you asked a question, and it's not uncommon that you'd see in negotiations or interrogations, you'd ask a question and you get contempt. And it might be about a mum, it might be about a dad or a family member or a partner. And it can be from like, she abused me, I got left at the altar, she killed my child, all the way through to, you know what? She just didn't do the dishes last night. Like, that's the same reaction.
Yeah.
We have to be very clear of also paying attention to what is being said and in what context this is happening.
So when you are noticing some of these micro expressions, what are some of the skills that people would need to have as to how they then go about questioning it and digging into what's going on there?
Yeah. So the first one is to take a step back from what you're doing and look at it from outside. So in the negotiation field, you are already in an unusual situation. If you're in a negotiation, or if worse, you're in an interrogation room, it's very hard because you immediately have someone who's not having a great day. They're immediately already. So we'll see all these things, Nicole, and I'm sure you've seen this before, is crossing arms in these rooms. Everyone's like, that's a blocking behavior. That person is not being honest. They're not telling us what's true. No, it's not. Yeah. It's actually a self-soothing reaction because we're giving ourselves a hug.
Yeah. That one is so often misinterpreted, isn't it? I used to be a really big crosser. It was just a comfort thing. It was, it was a protection if I was feeling a bit scared in front of a room full of people. It was, as you said, it is self-soothing and a bit of a hug, and I did it all the time. And while it's still comfortable for me, I've had to learn not to do that when I'm presenting, particularly because it can so easily be misinterpreted.
Yeah, and because it is seen as that. The other one that I see all the time and that I see is completely misinterpreted all the time is when I'm chatting to you and I look away and people go, they're lying, they looked away, they're being dishonest. No, they're just doing what's called classic disengagement. Disengagement is when you remove yourself from an immediate stimulus to start recalling information. So one of the things we saw a lot was like, if they look up to the right, they're thinking about it. If they look down to the left, they're lying. No, that's not how that works. What it is I'm disengaging with what's happening in front of me so I can recall information. The first thing we're going to need is more of our brain. So what I'm going to do is stop looking at you, look somewhere else and start to think. If you ever want to test this and see what it looks like in real life, have a conversation with someone, just get a ball rolling. How's your day been? What's happening? And then just say something like, can I ask you a question? What color's your front door? And they'll stop, literally stop and go, and they'll look up and they'll say red or black. Now, if the person's painted their door, just replaced it, they'll be like, it's yellow, because they know that information immediately. And that's the trick. You have to look at, how did you know that straight away? Oh, and you can't ask their birthday. We all know that. We can't ask what they have for dinner because they probably have the same thing every Wednesday night. You have to be mindful that this is, again, you have to be able to interpret in relation to what's happening all around.
Yeah. So can you ever definitively tell that someone is lying, or can you just get signals that you need to ask more questions?
That's a great question. I think it can be both, because I think body language and what they're saying gives away so quickly. So a classic one that you see a lot, particularly in police investigations, and there's hundreds of these examples online, is if someone says, yeah. Oh, great guy, don't know what you're talking about. And they are saying something positive and they're shaking their head no. Your body language will betray you. So it can't be used as evidence by itself, but what it can be used is as an indicator to ask more questions. You are only ever going to get someone lying through using verbal, but if you continually put pressure on that person and follow where the pressure points are, I've never seen someone not react and tell you exactly what you needed to know at some point.
Now I'm picturing torchlights in the eyes until they crack.
No, it's just a lot of conversation, and then when you see things. So I had a big think about negotiations, and I thought about some of the things that you probably want to look at, particularly for your clients. So I've got a list here for you.
Love it.
The first one is you want to look at, and we're looking at the whole of person here. The first thing is I want you to have a look at their hair. I want you to look if it's healthy, if it's well groomed, because it's going to give you a good indication of how they're feeling. Have you ever felt like you're having a crappy day and you're like, I'm not doing my hair today, I can't be bothered? Really common, so be mindful of that. It's honestly a huge tell. Second would be forehead. How much stress are they under? And how much stress are they continually going through? Because if you see more wrinkles you see. Now, here's the problem. Women, Botox, makeup, Be mindful of that. Look for other wrinkles. Look particularly around the eyes, and particularly for what we'll talk stress responses we'll talk about. I went and have a look at their eyes. How red are they? How much sleep have they gotten? What are the bags looking like? Makeup can hide, but it can't get rid of everything. And the biggest tell, so you'll see a lot of things, particularly in stressful situations. So those are the things you want to, when someone walks into a room, have a look, just to gauge where they're at. Have they done their hair? You know, we see people and they walk into meetings, their hair's all crazy, and you're like, you're all right. They're like, yeah, I'm fine. Immediately we'll go into self-soothing. This is a self-soothing thing. Anytime we do something repetitively, it's self-soothing. So we want to be mindful of how that person's acting straight away. The next thing is you're going to see what they look like in their natural state. So when we sit down, immediately we're going to sit a little bit more rigid, but over a couple of minutes, we're going to get a bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
As soon as you start seeing anything repetitive, these are really common ones: playing with your fingertips, hair, twirling. These are all self-soothing mechanisms.
I have a twiddle with my rings thing that goes on sometimes.
Yep, super common, because you're like, I've got to put nervous energy. Same with the leg. You'll see the leg wiggle.
Bouncing.
Now, it doesn't mean anything. What it is self-soothing. And that person could not be having a bad time at the negotiation. Or it could be that they've just had a fight with their husband, or they didn't have enough money for parking. Now they're worried about the parking inspector.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff can still be the same as like, I'm in a really bad situation. I'm negotiating for something and I'm really stressed about it. You have to be mindful about, you have to read all of the circumstances.
Yeah, I love that. And it is that idea about trying to, it comes back to this curiosity, doesn't it? Because I remember one mediation I had and somebody was really, really twitchy. So I'm in private session and they're, the fingers are sort of rapping on the table and they're just kind of looking at the door all the time. And I just sort of said, is everything okay? And it was exactly what you said. It was the parking. They'd come into the city. They were already anxious and nervous about the mediation to start with, but they'd parked somewhere and they were terrified that they were going to get this massive bill for parking. So I'm just like, that's fine. Go out, move the car, come back. We can come back. And they were much calmer when they came back. But it would have been easy to just ignore that behaviour and just continue on.
And it is so minimal. But there is someone who's like, they're lying because they're twitching. I'm like, no, they're just worried about the parking inspector. And it's a common one I see all the time. I live in the city as well. So I know that constantly people like looking at watches, or like they're kind of looking at the door.
Yeah.
They're facing towards the door. All of a sudden you're like, do you need to go? You're right. Just parking inspector. I'm like, you worry about parking. And you can call it sometimes, because when you get better at seeing these as holes, it's a real thing.
So I think then it sounds like, we want to get better at recognizing these micro expressions. We want to then be curious to go, what's going on here? It's more of an alarm bell than anything, but we're still going to have to do a bit of work to get down to the bottom of whether that person is or isn't lying.
Yeah, 100%. There is no tell of someone lying. This has to be looked at as the whole of person. And the problem is with this kind of work that you're doing in negotiation, and you have to sometimes spend a lot of time with them, and you'll get a base read pretty quickly.
I was going to say that's the difference between negotiating with someone that you have known for a long time and have a relationship with the first time customer or client that you have no idea, because I think it's with a lot of things. And interestingly, there's a lot of parallels here with detecting mental health issues, is that you are comparing against that baseline. It's not, is the person doing this? Is the person doing something that's not how they normally behave?
Yeah. And there is a lot of merit in honestly starting relationships in this area before you need them.
Yeah.
So some other classic things that I will tell you that I think will be good tips for your listeners is that the one part of our face that we are, as humans, we are terrible at controlling are our lips. Which sounds silly.
I was sure you were going to say eyes. Isn't that interesting?
Eyes, because we'll pay attention. Our lips often be like, we often play with our mouth. It's the other thing we'll do as humans. There are different times that we'll do that. It's a stress response. It's also an arousal response. Yeah. So you often want to touch your lips if you're feeling amorous and wanting to be near your partner, but also if you're really stressed, you'll often peek at your lips.
Yeah.
Well, it can be the same thing because your heart rate's about the same. Then you end up with the other things you'll see is people biting down on them or sucking in if they've got information they don't like. So that's a key thing I would like really get you to focus on the next stressful conversation. Look at how they're dealing with their lips. The next thing is I want you to see where the head is. So a conversation, Nicole, right now in our video chat, you've got a bit of a slant going on because you're like, this is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know you could do all this. And then whereas if you sit upright, I'm now formally, and because I'm teaching right now and I'm giving education, I'm sitting very upright because the state I need to be in is the confident. I need to be that. It's really hard for me to teach and be kind of slanted. So look at where their head is. The other thing is for immediate stress responses, there are only a couple of really good ones and good tells. The first one is your fingers being stiff. Now, this is not the steeple. This is confidence. Steeple is where you are talking confidently. When your fingers are flat anywhere, it is a classic stress response.
So there you go. So when they've got the hands flat on the table,
flat on the table,
flat on their arms as well, or
no, arms not so much, because it's still very rare that you do that, because the idea of a cuddle is that you're gripping. Yeah. There's some grip there. It goes back to real primate stuff. We're grabbing hold of mum. We don't have mum or hug myself. Oh God, I'm gripping to me. It really is a table, or you'll see it as if they've got flat hands and
like
doing
prayer hands.
Prayer hands, but not together. It's going to be apart. And the final one is called ventilation, and it's my favorite thing to watch. It's why you'll see over the top in movies when they're like, oh, getting hot under the collar. Ventilation is we are trying to get cool down quickly as not to show responses. They're kind of the really big ones. And also watching when people try to sit upright if they're getting angry. You'll see people sit in chairs and get anger. That's a good one too. Watch their shoulders.
And is that when we're, if we're talking about the context of trying to detect them lying, they're getting angry because it's that aggressive response. You're getting close to detecting me, so I'm going to get a little bit powerful and frighten you away. Yeah, back off.
It's almost like you're hitting a nerve now. I'm not happy with it. Watch me point this nerve a little harder and this is not an exact science, but this is our DNA and this is what we do. And there's no formula approach to like just be, and it can be, you can be like ventilation. It could be just they're a bit hot. Like it can be they've got new shoes on with socks on. Be mindful of this, but be aware when you see it. And
could be they're in menopause.
Have you ever? Yeah, I'm in peri, mate. I feel you on every level. Occasionally I'm like, what is that? Oh, I'm not looking forward to my late 40s. So there's a lot of stuff that we do.
Yeah.
Just knowing we're doing it is really common and everyone does it. The thing is you have to just get better at identifying it, because the non-verbal conversations we're having are so much more important than the verbal conversations that we're having, especially in this kind of area of negotiation. And, this is stuff I can teach easily. Like, it's not stuff that's difficult. What it is about pulling it up as soon as it's happening and getting people to recognize it for what it is and then know that's a pressure point, hit harder.
Yeah, I love that. There is some fantastic advice. Have you got any sort of stories that resonate with you, experiences of how you've used this that would sort of land with our listeners and really make all of this memorable?
That I can tell? Yes, I've got a few.
The ones that you
later,
can.
I was like, oh God, here we go. So I'll give you an actual one that happened. I'll give you one that happened in an actual negotiation. A client of mine who was working for basically agreed to have some videos filmed. And the company that agreed to do the work then really ran with this narrative and completely changed. So this person was working in kind of a gambling arena. The gambling arena has done some really incredible stuff with anti-gambling, attempting to kind of get pokie machines removed, but was also working closely with the United Nations. Let me be very clear, they're not the United Nations. We're working closely with to assist with one of the sustainability goals. And this other company was like, we've just been hired by the United Nations and we're telling all these people incredibly factually incorrect information. Also, the deal was not good. As someone who was on the board, I was asked to come into a meeting and I was like, hi. And I unfortunately was there first and they were a bit blindsided that I was going to be there. And they're like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm meeting with you guys as well. And I sat down and I immediately saw stress response. And I watched them go from genuine excitement, I'm running into you somewhere, to what are you doing here? And I watched this moment of, and what it would be described as this no shit moment is when people like no, and there was immediate stress response. So this meeting happens, this conversation happens, and to start with, it's going well, but immediately I'm seeing very poised people who are no longer conversational, and I immediately will mirror whatever you're throwing at me. I will mirror back to you, because it's the easiest way to build a rapport, and it's the easiest way. So as soon as they sat up in an upright position, I did the same, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I just mirrored everything he did. And that made him more uncomfortable. So as we sort of said, this is actually a bad deal. 1, you can't say that. 2, this is a bad deal for us, throw everyone out. And I watched him grit his teeth down, clench his jaw, straighten his fingers, and clench every part of his arm. Like everything was like in a muscular, as not to respond. Here's the problem. He knew immediately what I was doing. I was looking at him. He knew my skill set. He knew where I come from. And I watched him kind of shake it off immediately. Just this like, oh, and I was like, do you think that's subtle, firstly? So it looks like he gets bad news and just starts flailing around. All I was looking is to see how bothered he was by this.
Yeah.
It was true anger. And it was truly like, I watched the clench, I watched the head go down, I watched him get very angry. And then I watched constantly as he did this, and he rubbed his arm for the next 5 minutes while we were having the conversation. Anything that's done on repeat is a self-soothing method.
Yeah.
So I knew all of that was uncomfortable and awful for him and felt pretty difficult. And I watched a few ventilations and a few like, no, that's fine. You're running hands through hair, touching, like really kind of stimulating the self-soothing motion. So that was one that I saw. The second one that I saw that
so
was...
can I just, coming back to that a little bit then. So in terms of how that information played into the negotiation itself, what was the importance of being able to pick all of that up in terms of managing the negotiation?
Yeah, the important part of that was to see how angry, what I wanted to see was what the response was going to be of a pushback. Is that what had happened was an accidental agreement by my friend who was like, I just didn't realize what they were asking. I thought this was a good idea. This is actually a really bad idea. I've read the contract. No contracts were signed. It was all verbal at that point. But what I wanted to see was, if we took this away from you, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah.
And I wanted to see how respectful you would be that you're now not getting your way. Because what it seemed to me from the outside was these guys had rallied her into a corner, leveraged off her profile, and then started to talk shit, basically, and be like, we're big noting ourselves. That's what I saw. I wanted to confirm whether my hypothesis was correct. When you're flashing anger and disappointment and quite aggressive behavior, and then immediately catching yourself and trying to shake it off because you know who I am, it was very funny to me to watch that, because I was going, okay, I was right. These guys needed her more than she needed them.
Yes.
And it was important for me to know that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was like, oh, let me explain. Oh, is that what you thought we agreed to? I'm so open palm. I'm so sorry. Like, really, like, no, let's figure this out. Versus a very angry response, wildly different intentions.
Yeah.
What are your intentions here?
Love it. And it gives you an idea then of, for me, once again, in negotiation speak, it gives you an idea of what might their alternatives be and how might they respond if you can't come to something mutual in the negotiation itself. So really, really important stuff.
The second great one I saw was someone coming in was a customs interview. I can't give you much more other than it was a customs interview. And it was someone who was coming out to Australia. And it was a training video that I often showed people when they were getting into this. And it's one of my favorite things that Australian Border Force, I think it was Australian, it might have been Kiwi now I think about it. Anyway, whatever. It was a country that was bringing someone in. And the questions are being asked naturally. And the questions were, hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Can I have your passport? Thanks. Going through the passport. They're looking at, oh, yeah, great. Where are you staying? Is like, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Oh, great. Cool. And how was your flight? Yeah, fine. Great. Window aisle seat. Window. Perfect. What'd you have for dinner? And the guy was like, I had chicken. And he's like, oh, was it good? And he's like, it was what? Immediately, we're having a different conversation. Immediately, we've gotten out of I have now recorded these ideas and the things that I'm going through memory. And now I'm going to ask you a different question. So what this man was suspected of doing was importation of drugs.
Yeah.
And so he knew, he said, play it cool, not sweat, not be weird, and just answer questions.
So the minute he got a different question that he wasn't expecting, he was suddenly
Game over.
Yeah.
Fear. What? Oh my God. What?
This isn't what was the plan.
Hang on. I should know this. Chicken. I had the chicken. Oh, how was it? Fine. Like, we've got fear. We've got deer in headlights. Now, for anyone, he could have been just a person that was like, I didn't eat anything. I fell asleep. Like, but that is an overreaction to a very basic question.
Yeah.
I've caught 37 flights this year, Nicole. I think you did. I've caught a lot of flights this year. My 37th flight, could I tell you the food that I've had? I was like, what did I have on my last flight? I flew back from New Zealand yesterday, and I was like, what did I have? I had the pasta. Was it good? No airplane food is good. It's all gross. We're just there, like, I'm getting a snack. I'm happy about that. That's it. This guy flashed fear. He was scared. Here's the problem. It's not judging the moment. It's transmitting what they're talking about in that very second.
Yeah.
It was the overreaction. We flashed fear. We had, oh my God, I was like, I've got some additional questions. Come with me.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to put you in a really stressful state. Let's see how you cope with that.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? And once again, it's just that, that ability to pick up on something that suggests further investigation is required without jumping to conclusions.
Yeah. And simply as, my sister flashing contempt about her friend, and she just got a Target skirt. She wanted more.
Yeah.
It can be that simple of two versus she slept with my husband. I'm so angry right now. She broke into my house. I hate her and everything about her. The problem is it's the same reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
The job to figure it out, what it means in that second.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the fantastic stuff that you've shared with us today, Jemimah. I've really enjoyed hearing some more about this. Thank you for sharing some of your stories. Obviously, now your world is a little bit different. And as you said up front, your job now is helping people become visible. But if someone wanted to reach out either to learn more about this or to touch base with you about the Visibility Lab, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Oh, the good thing is I'm super visible. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things. JemimahAshleigh.com. Send me an email. Love to tell you more about this. This is my favorite thing to talk about, and I never get to talk about it anymore because I absolutely adore it. So happy to chat to anyone about it.
Well, we might have to have you back to talk about it some more another time, because I'm sure people will enjoy this episode. Jemimah, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. Loved it.
That's all for this episode of the Negotiation in Real Life podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and learned something new that you can apply in your own negotiations. Remember, negotiation is a skill that can be developed and refined over time, so keep practicing and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us on social media or email us directly. And if you liked this episode, please leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. It helps us to reach more people and continue to produce high-quality content. Until next time, keep negotiating in real life.